In Game of Thrones Episode 3, The Long Night, we saw the moment we've been looking forward to for years now. The Night King was laid to rest after thousands of years of terrorizing humanity with his brooding stares and vast army of the dead. Arya Stark stabbed him in the chest with a Valyrian steel dagger, and the Night King burst into 1,000 icy shards, along with his frozen servants. A great moment of triumph for the forces on the side of life. Or was it? Is that frosty Lord of Death actually gone? Or will we see him again in the next 3 episodes? No, he obviously died. He burst into a million billion little pieces, and then all the rest of the White Walkers and Whites fell apart too. We've seen this before during Jon's mission beyond the wall to secure a White, when he cut down a Walker, and all of his Whites instantly fell apart. And then, in the Inside the Episode coverage, showrunners Weiss and Benioff had this to say about what happened when Arya shoved that dagger into the Night King's chest. For 3 years now, we knew it was going to be Arya who delivered the final blow. We knew it had to be Valyrian steel to the exact spot where the Child of the Forest put the dragon glass blade to create the Night King, and he's uncreated by the Valyrian steel. That seems pretty definitive from the mouths of the writers and showrunners. The Night King was uncreated in that moment by Valyrian steel. It was a fatal blow. Case closed, video over. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. Well, just as an exercise, let's see if the Night King did survive his fatal blow and uncreation, and we somehow see him again. How could that have happened? How could he have escaped the pull of death? Well, the first thing to look at is on Twitter and in interviews, Night King actor and noted stuntman Vladimir Furdik has been dropping some very juicy hints ahead of time. In his interview earlier this year with James Hibbard of Entertainment Weekly, he revealed that during the season, the Night King would have a target he wants to kill, and that he would have a similar moment with Jon as he did in Hardhome. And those turned out to be correct. During the season so far, and during the episode, the Night King did try to personally kill Bran out of vengeance for his creation and to wipe out all memory in the world with one swing of his ice sword and bring eternal winter. And then second, when Jon tries charging the Night King outside the walls of Winterfell, the Night King again does his arm-raising flex move and brings all the dead of the battle and the crypts into his service as new Whites. Again, right on the money. Vladimir is on a roll for giving fairly accurate information about his character's actions and motivations ahead of time. So then we get this, a tweet from Vlad after the episode airs. How did the Night King change Craster's babies? By touching them. How did he change Viserion? By touching it. What did Bloodraven say to Bran Stark in the cave? He touched you. Hashtag food for thought. The comparison he's drawing is that when the Night King touches somebody, there's a transformation that happens in that life form. Craster's baby became a White Walker, Viserion as well. And then you get Bran, and the Night King left a mark on him as well. Vladimir may be implying that some part of the Night King lives on in this world. That mark is very peculiar. It attached itself to Bran's arm across time and space. It happened while Bran was using his green sight to see another place, the very tree where the Night King was created, now covered in snow. The Night King was standing there with all of his forces lined up looking at that tree for some reason. And then somehow the Night King sees Bran and grabs his arm, leaving that mark on his physical body. Previously in the show, it's been established that no one else can see Bran while he is using his green sight, not even his past selves who are viewing the same scene, which makes the fact that the Night King could do this very curious. In addition to just being able to see Bran, the mark left on Bran's arm in the dream world follows him back to that cave and attaches it on his arm. When Bloodraven realizes that, he declares that the cave's wards will no longer work, and that the Night King can now find Bran. This mark is something very different, something very magical. It burned itself onto skin hundreds or thousands of miles away. And then with Furdik's hashtag about this being hashtag food for thought, and his fairly good record so far of letting out reliable hints, maybe the mark is somehow an extension of the Night King now. It managed to stay on Bran all the way into season 8. Even when Bran is telling the War Council that no matter where he goes, the Night King can track him with it, that he's drawn to it. Perhaps that's because he left a part of himself on Bran, some kind of a second life for him, a shadow on the soul. In the books, there's this concept known as second lives for skin changers like Bran, that when their physical body dies, their soul can live on.
A woman of those who sing the song of the earth,
his teacher said,
long dead, yet a part of her remains, just as a part of you would remain in summer if your boy's flesh were to die upon the morrow, a shadow on the soul. She will not harm you.
Normally it's animals that the skin changers spend their second lives in, merging their mind with their host body over time, and eventually forgetting the person they used to be for the most part. Many times Bran got this warning from Jojen, Reed, and Bloodraven that if he stayed too long in the trees or summer, he would eventually lose himself. Oddly intertwined, and Bran in particular opened a horrific door when he began skin changing Hodor and using him as a second body. The big stable boy no longer fought him as he had the first time, back in the lake tower during the storm. Like a dog who had all the fight whipped out of him, Hodor would curl up and hide whenever Bran reached out for him. His hiding place was somewhere deep within him, a pit where not even Bran could touch him. "No one wants to hurt you, Hodor," he said silently to the child man whose flesh he'd taken. "Just want to be strong again for a while. I'll give it back, the way I always do." And in a twist of fate perhaps, this may be happening to Bran. If the Night King left some part of his soul in Bran, for Harry Potter fans, something like a Horcrux, he may not be dead completely, but will instead begin to corrupt and merge with Bran and influence his thoughts, maybe even seek to take control of his body over time. A new Night King born from the Mark, a slow disease, something close to grayscale, that will eventually turn him, and there may even be some hints towards that. Ever since the attack on Bloodraven's cave, Bran has been a very different person. On one hand, we know he has become something else, something not quite human by becoming the Three-Eyed Raven and merging with the soul of the trees. And that entire sequence of events was extremely traumatic for Bran, that he may be suffering some kind of long-term PTSD from the horrific attack. He's become extremely odd. Many characters have noted how strange and alien he seems now, and that he rarely talks. Perhaps like the Night King, who never utters a single word throughout the series. On their last meeting, Mira Reed told him that he died in that cave, that he's become something else ever since. Knowing that mark on his arm, and that it may be some kind of corruption or second life, she may not be far off. Bran may be turning into a new Night King, if we see in the upcoming episodes that mark on his arm still lingers. And also, maybe not just Bran. Right before his death, the Night King grabbed another Stark on their arm and their neck, Arya Stark. The same that applies to Bran could happen for Arya if even a touch from the Night King is enough to turn a being into another of his kind, or maybe even a copy of himself. And that would make some thematic sense, that killing him is not the end, that it's not that simple, that he is a curse or blight on the world that you cannot just remove. We'll have to see in the upcoming episode again if she has some kind of mark on her arm or neck like Bran does, and if it starts to fade. If not, we may have a Night King or Night Queen again. Another possibility for the Night King surviving beyond his apparent death is the aforementioned obsidian spearhead that causes transformation from man into cold death. In my video Whisper Jewels, the Power of the Night King, I argue that obsidian itself is the very source of his power. Also, when he exploded from Arya's attack, the obsidian itself was really nowhere to be seen. Benjen Stark as well was reanimated in a similar way with a shard of obsidian in his chest in a state of undeath and safe from becoming a white. We saw something similar to this with Melisandre and her ruby. When she finally took it off at the end of the episode and tossed it aside, she finally died after an extremely long life and began almost instantly crumbling into dust. Magic gemstones and minerals are a major part of the books and the show. So that piece of obsidian that made him may be hidden far away somewhere else. Again, kind of like a Horcrux, and waiting for a new host, or maybe to regain strength and reform itself. Much like happened in Lord of the Rings when Sauron's body was destroyed by Isildur, but instead, he had tied his soul to the Ring of Power, and the ring was not destroyed, so Sauron survived in some cursed half-life. Over time, he regained his power and influence, and possibly even form, becoming known as the Necromancer. This ties in well with the concept of second lives. Many magical figures we've seen, like the Undying of Tarth or Bloodraven, have extended their mortal lives far beyond their limits. That the Night King has lived for thousands of years with a fatal wound to his chest is a testament to that as well. And finally, although less thought of as a possibility for the Icy Night King, but resurrection is a thing in this world. Whether we're talking fire whites like Beric Dondarrion, ice whites like the Night King's former forces, Benjen Stark who lived on beyond death with that shard of obsidian in his chest, or even like Jon Snow. The dead of this world are not gone, and neither are their souls. There's somehow a way to recall the dead from the underworld, and maybe the same for the Night King. Especially for him, since as he demonstrated in the episode, his main powers are from necromancy. Take away his army of dead things and he's mostly just an angry popsicle that is kind difficult to kill. Given the extreme length of his life, he may have planned ahead for his own death with a plan to return with his mastery over life and death itself. All in all, it's kind of hard to say if he actually will return though. While these are possibilities, Dan and Dave's language seems pretty definitive that he is dead and uncreated, and that doesn't leave a ton of wiggle room. And also, while he and the White Walkers are a primary threat of the show, they serve more as tools to apply pressure to the human characters and make them face the imminent doom of all life or die apart. A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones have always been more about the people in the world and their famous line, hearts in conflict with themselves. So it would make sense that he was truly gone now, and the story ends with those people putting back together the world that he destroyed and seeing if they have learned any lessons from the experience. On the other hand, there are the pieces on the board, so to speak, for the Night King to be not quite as dead as he appears to be, and Vladimir Furdik's hints and fairly reliable history of giving away plot points, we should certainly be asking going into the final half of the final season if he has truly gone, or like a shadow on the soul of the world, the Night King will find a way to rise with the cold north winds again and try to bring the world back into his dream of an endless night. And maybe even from behind the unassuming masks of Bran and Arya Stark, we will see if dawn has truly come for Westeros.